7:04, I'd like to go into order, please. So we're going to call to order this regular meeting of the Berkeley Police Review Commission. Today is Wednesday, May 8th, and the time is 7:04. Mr. Norris, if you could pass a roll call, please.
Commissioner Alamy.
Present.
Commissioner Caldeira.
Yes, here.
Commissioner Bernes.
Present.
Commissioner Matthews is not present. Commissioner Mickelson is not present. Commissioner Perezvelez.
Present.
Commissioner Ramsey.
Here.
Commissioner Roberts.
Here.
Chair, we have quorum.
Thank you so much. So since we have quorum, folks take the time to look at the agenda and let me know if there are any concerns, any movement to the agenda up and down, any of the business, if anything is going to be held up. Does anybody have any item within the agenda that needs to be postponed or moved up?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
Just a question, I guess, on 10C.
10C.
You know, this report is what I would call sort of underwhelming at the best. And, you know, I have a lot of questions about it, but only Chief could answer many of them. And I understand the Chief's not gonna be here tonight. So I have a question, you know, we could, I guess, discuss it for context or something, but at some point we need to engage the Chief on it. And so we'd either, maybe we could have some discussion tonight and hold it, or till next meeting and ask the Chief to be here. That would be my thought.
So there's two things. I mean, on this particular item, as an information to the members of the public and to the members of the commission, I did meet with the chief about his responses on the number of council referral items that came to his office in city council, and this is one of the items. So I know that he has prepared a 7-page response to city council, not only on this particular item or other items.
Chair, we just want to remind the Commissioner we're on approval of the agenda.
That's right. I mean, we're not discussing it, so I mean, so we can certainly postpone it until the chief is here. Since the last item on the agenda before we start, let's just get on with the agenda and then we can have a discussion further down whether we'll keep it or not. James?
Just one comment about 10B. 10B,
Uh-huh.
on new business, that's my item. I think we should postpone that as well. There's some legislative analysis that I'm getting from Senator Wayner's office that I'll be able to provide, which I think makes sense for people to consider before we take that.
So let the record show that Commissioner Mickelson has joined the meeting. Commissioner Mickelson, we are talking about 10B and 10C and postponing those two items on the agenda until the next meeting. B, because Commissioner Ramsey's item, he wants to have a little more time for it. And item C, because the chief is not here and we should be able to ask some questions of him on his items. Does anybody have any concerns with the postponement of those two items as per this discussion? So no concerns, so we'll move these two items to the next agenda. Okay, so if there is no other concerns or comments, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as it stands with those two corrections. Moved for Commissioner Allenby, second by Commissioner Roberts. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any abstentions, any nays? Seeing none, it's approved. We'll move into public comment. Are any members of the public who would like to speak at this time? Yes, sir, please.
Commissioners, my name is Charles Clark from District 6. I've been coming to these meetings for the past year, and I noticed in the packet for today's meeting at page 56, there's a letter of resignation from a commissioner. The tone of the resigning commissioner's message is dissatisfaction with what this commission is not. But having seen this commission in action for the past year, and the BPD for the past even a longer period of time, I thought it was worthwhile for you to at least hear why I would be interested in what you do. And that is because it's not so much what you are not, but rather what you are. You're an expression of the people of Berkeley to watch the police. And I don't mean just stand passively by. You do have an investigative role that is written into the ordinance that the people of Berkeley passed. And you've heard me speak in past sessions about your role reviewing the rules under which they comport themselves. You know, the general orders, now the Lexipol Policies. And I urge you to continue with that effort of harmonizing what is in the Lexipol rules with the rules that you think the people of Berkeley want their police to live by. That is what you are about. And I'm saying you as a commission. I think as a citizen watching the police, I've noticed that they are incredibly well behaved. I invite your attention, in fact, to a video which you can reach by this tiny URL. It's simply at watch-BPD, and to give you a heads up, it's a Berkeley Cop Watch video of the events of November 4th, 2016. It was a removal of a homeless encampment on Adeline Street. Now, this removal was actually challenged in court as a violation of certain individuals' rights. A decision in that case was rendered, and I don't mean to bias how you view the video, but the Judge Alsop in San Francisco, found no reasonable juror could evaluate the circumstances of this encounter and conclude that any of the officer's conduct amounted to objectively unreasonable force. That's a pretty serious finding by a very serious judge in a very serious forum. This commission steps in not only on things that reach federal court, but things that are much less. And we, as people, look to you to involve yourself in that. So Watch BPD is not just a URL, it's actually what I would advise this commission to continue to do. I think that that's the most important thing to keep in mind. Now, an alternative model whereby, you know, you're an investigating, avenging angel is not the right approach. Nor is your serving as research assistants for a plaintiff's counsel. I think that the proper way to do this is, you know, the Lexipol things you're going forward on, the other activities I see that are on the agenda. I think that you should be taking the goodwill that I know all of you have and apply it to the fact that the police really do need to be watched. That's part of the deal, the social contract that we have here in Berkeley. So I thank you for doing this job. I don't think you get enough thanks, and I look forward to your continuing to do it.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir, please.
So my name is Elliot Halpern. I'm here tonight as a citizen of Berkeley and a board member of the ACLU and speaking for the ACLU. We strongly back the proposal presented tonight by, I think it's 10A, to examine whether to recommend revising policy on probation and parole searches of pedestrians and motorists. You have in your packet the Supreme Court case of Sampson versus California, which gave the strictest interpretation of the California law. And it meant that it interpreted as any parolee in California could be stopped anytime, any place, without suspicion of criminal activity or warrant. We strongly feel that this has led to this indiscriminate skirting of the Fourth Amendment has led to disproportionate stops in California and of people of color in this area. It also undermines the spirit and process of rehabilitation. The principle of parole was supposed to be. The ACLU and the NAACP has been collecting anecdotal evidence since stop data collection started for the public in 2015. One of the questions that, and we've gone, since we don't get a lot of complaints because people are hesitant to complain, we go into the community about encounters with the police. We have, since, in Berkeley, since the disbanding of the drug task force, truly these type of totally indiscriminate encounters by police has abated.
Ms. Halpern, if I can just pause your time real quickly. You only have 1 more minute, but I can certainly make time at the time of the agenda if no one has any concerns about it, and give you a little bit more time. Once the item becomes on the agenda, Mr. Halpern, I can give you more time to speak at that time. See if commissioners have questions,
Right. Because
this is an important subject. But, so don't feel, I'm going to this to you, you have 1 more minute, but don't be limited by that.
Yeah.
We can make more time for you then as well.
I appreciate that. I may not be able to stay around for that, but
Understood.
I appreciate that opportunity.
Does any commissioner have a problem with extending the time for Mr. Halpern to 2 more minutes?
Well, I'm almost through anyway.
Okay.
So this is still happening in Berkeley at some level. And we strongly encourage you to form a subcommittee to explore this question. It's very important, and in an expanded version we can deal with all the variables in this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, please.
Greetings. Do I need to be taped? I don't mind being recorded. I would not like to be.
If you don't want to be videotaped, it's a public meeting, but I will go left.
Sounds good. And excuse me, I do have a code, and so that's henceforth my coverage and all. My name is Kiwan Gore. I live at 2038 Parker in Shattuck, here in Berkeley, at the Parker Apartments. My concerns, I've kind of written a letter previously. I'm not sure if I'm in the right place, but this is a start. It's regarding the Berkeley's homeless population residing in the tents at the AC Transit bus stops, as well as the traffic lights. I'm very concerned, forgive me, I'll just read it since it's more timely in that regard. I am very concerned about my security and safety as a Berkeley resident who walks and utilizes all forms of public transportation within the city of Berkeley. Directly across from my residence are homeless tents on Shattuck at both Parker and Carlton corners. The Parker and Shattuck corner is the location of AC Transit bus stop. The Carlton and Shattuck corner is the traffic light. There are, on Monday, there was 6 tents set up within Parker and Carlton on Shattuck. Now there are 4, I just checked that out today. In addition, this block has a construction currently occurring with large gates and construction vehicles blocking in the parking area. I am a physically challenged person who lives alone. I have witnessed various people, animals living and visiting visitors of these tents throughout the day and night. They have created an outside environment of chairs, animals, feeding stations, bikes, tables, boxes, grills, etc. that has at some point hindered my ability to clearly walk to the AC Transit bus stop or down the street. There have been a few late night disruptive verbal conversations as well. I did have a proposition, I'll reserve that for now. I will say, well, no, I'm going to read it. I propose that Berkeley homeless tents not be able to set up at any of the AC Transit bus stops. I also propose establishing a tent registry. I don't know what is being done right now, so forgive me for that, but this is just my proposal and my concern. I also propose establishing a tent registry, specifically identifying the tent owners and individuals residing. For the public to see, we will post a City of Berkeley registration number outside the tent. So I'm not concerned about really who's there, but the process of the City of Berkeley and the police knowing who's supposed to be there. So I don't need to know that, and that gives me some kind of awareness, at least, where if I do see some kind of conflict or fearful, I could actually just call in and give the tent number. I am dismayed around this homeless epidemic currently happening throughout America. I, as a citizen, seriously want homeless to be eradicated through livable wages and reasonable housing prices. As for Berkeley, I do carry mace. However, I am afraid that the homeless population may have firearms. 1 minute. Someone with mental health issues, and or just decides to attack at will. I do not know this population. I do not want to be robbed or attacked. In addition, I have now limited my life activities around being home before nighttime, if I am on public transportation. And thank you for listening and the consideration and service to the City of Berkeley and its residents. Keep on board.
Thank you. So this is one of the places where you can go. City Council is another one. The board, AC Board of Directors meets once a month. It meets today, and the next day, in the Transit Board of Directors and Retirement Board, all the boards meet at 5:15. The Board of Directors for AC Transit meets at 5:22 as well, at 5 p.m. on the second floor boardroom in Franklin Street in Oakland. So 5:15, 5:22, and today at 5 p.m. on the Franklin Room, AC Transit meets. There is a question of the jurisdiction of the space of Berkeley within AC Transit property, but that's AC Transit can also be met either today on the 22nd. On the 22nd at 5 o'clock at the Franklin Room in Oakland is when they meet. Next time, so that would be probably the 3 places where you can go, but thank you for your input tonight. That's it for public comment. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Christine Schwartz, and at last PRC meeting, we heard from Chief Greenwood, and he did bring up the subject. I don't know if it resonated with folks here, but I'm going to repeat it because it's also one of my concerns, and that is that Berkeley has a big meth problem, and I was wondering, thank you, fellow media person. I was wondering if it's possible if this commission could address it, put it on their agenda possibly. I'm not on this commission, so I would appreciate if they can, because it is a huge problem, both safety and it affects people mentally ill and financially disadvantaged folks, etc., and the police. So they deal with it every day. So the other thing is I wanted to bring up safety for homeless people. I don't know what's happening out there really. I only have been on a couple of police ride-alongs, so I hope to get more to get further educated. But I was wondering what happens with individuals who are homeless on the streets, living in tents, not living in tents, living in their cars. I mean, are they being hit by crime, or are people getting raped, or people being financially abused, or are they financially abusing people? I don't know. I'm just wondering if we have some statistics. I'm concerned about everybody's well-being, everybody's safety, and I was wondering, since this is the Police Review Commission and the police confront these issues every day, if we're aware of it and if we can address those items too. Thank you.
Can you repeat, please, what was the first item on the, first item you wanted to see if it could be placed on the agenda?
Oh, the meth item.
The
There's
use of meth?
use of meth. Well, police are called, police, interface with the meth issues on the streets every day. There are dealers on the streets who are simply allowed to, you know, sell their drugs, and there's nothing that's being done. And I figure if it's available to people, it's just gonna continue to grow to be a huge problem with crime, safety, and everything. So
Understood.
it's gotta be an agenda item.
Okay.
Thank you.
Understood. I mean, it's more of what are the police department doing in terms of task force to deal with the any and all drug usage or sales and things like that.
Yes, and
That's what it will fall into.
okay, thank you. And I think that proposition, I think 47 is it, kind of interferes with their ability to address the issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just for the record, let the record show as well that Commissioner Matthews is present. Welcome. If there's no further public comment, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of April 24th. Moved by Commissioner Middleton, seconded by Commissioner Roberts. Are there any questions, any concerns, any discussion? Seeing as there's none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Are there any abstentions, any nays? No abstentions or nays? Great. Chair's report. I had some information to give, but first and foremost, I want to welcome Commissioner Lamont Ernest to the commission. He's a new member of the commission appointed by City Council Member Davila. Is a replacement of our fellow commissioner, Commissioner Pritchett. And Mr. Lamont Ernest, the floor is yours if you want to introduce yourself to the commission, please.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Lamont Ernest. I've been a resident of Berkeley for about 10 years now. Former military, federal employee, citizen. Just think I have some really interesting perspectives and experiences with law enforcement on a personal level that would allow me valuable insight on hoping to continue the good work that Berkeley Police Department is claiming to do. Thank you all.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Okay, in addition to that, we also, just as a chair's report, as a chair's report, and thank you to the commissioners who were in attendance on Friday to the NACOLE regional training, which was under the support of both the PRC and the Office of the OIPA, Office of Independent Police Investigator, of Internal Police Investigator. Auditor. Yeah, auditor. Sorry about that. I've been there for 9 years and I don't know the name. And also for the BART Citizens Police Review Board, in which, with the support of Ms. Lee, which is not here, and Mr. Byron, and the whole office of the PRC, and the whole office of OIPA and CRB, it was quite a successful thing. Note to the record, the chief was also present in some of the discussions and represented Berkeley very well. It was all in all probably attended about 150 people.
About 200.
About 200 people. Everybody came in the middle about 12 to 3, and then everybody disappeared. I mean, no one was there for the opening or the closing remarks, which is perfectly fine. I'm just teasing.
There were quite a few people still available for Commissioner Perezvelez.
No, but that's not what that was not the pitch. On the pitch. The pitch was that people came in the middle, which makes sense.
I have photo evidence that people stayed behind.
And still those pictures have not been shared. But having said that, it was a great event for having a discussion with a lot of members of police oversight from here, from other places, which added ability for people all the way from Sacramento all the way to Chico and all the way to LA to represent themselves, particularly folks that are looking to create police oversight boards. And so it was, all in all, it was a great forum. I know there's another regional training on May 17th coming up down the pipeline, and then the conference happens at the end of
September.
Which will have a discussion then about attendance or what that would entail.
It was, if I can just add.
Please.
I was just very pleased that we had a good showing from this commission. We had 6 commissioners. Commissioners Migatin, Calavita, Allenby, Perezvelez, Roberts, and our new commissioner, Ernest.
And for the record, no discussion was done on any items on the agenda, so no violation of the Brown Act.
Okay. So thank you for your participation and support, particularly since Berkeley was one of the co-sponsors of the event. And that's all I have.
And it was great because I think some of the commissioners got to meet some of the members of the PCRB, which I served with at some point, right? So it was all the members of the community at the region level that you folks were able to meet. But yeah, please, go ahead.
It's
Commissioner Mickey.
fascinating. What's the May 17th event? Is that something?
It's another regional training,
It's
like
in
the one we had.
Tennessee. It's a NACOLE regional
So
training.
we don't need to go.
You don't need to go.
I probably will attend because my sister lives in Knoxville, Tennessee, so it's an excuse to see my sisters. So it is a great, I can say that I went to Tennessee to see my sisters and then just sliding into the regional training.
The National Organization for Oversight, NACO, is encouraging local oversight agencies to do more of these regional events. They used to do just the annual conference, so to supplement what happens on the national level.
And it's important to preface the conversation and in the Bay Area to talk about what the nexus are for police oversight boards, what are the concerns, what are the movements, everything else, and even for correctional facilities is very, very important because Tennessee has an ordinance within the city of Knoxville, Tennessee, to create a police oversight board. So they're in the makings now, appointing the 11th board member, and that's just taking place right now and fleshing out as it moves. So which is a great thing. It's a great thing.
And it was good also, we're piggybacking here, but I sent a thank you note to the chief today, because it's good to have the law enforcement perspective at the civilian oversight conferences like this. So it was good for him to be on the panel and provide his perspective, particularly in regards to the new transparency law, and just on general matters as well, and submit himself to questions from the civilian oversight community. So,
in a much different perspective, it was really important to see Uncle Bobby be able to be in a panel for NACOLE, understanding that the PCRB and the OIPA for BART were created after the Oscar Grant's death. So because of that catalyst to create a police oversight, it was such a regional district in the Bay Area, it was important for him not to only be talking about in Sacramento and other places in California, but to be speaking at a forum that is more of a national forum. So that was really important as well, just to not only validate the efforts that they do, but validate also his presence as a creative force behind the OIP and the PCRB. So, I mean, I see him every single meeting, but to be able to see him on the other perspective was quite important. You want to sum this just really quickly?
Just quickly, I attended this conference and I want to second the motion. The panelists were excellent and with really good discussion of key issues. So it was an excellent conference.
So we'll see you at the national conference in September in Detroit. That's what I just heard. And any and all members of the Berkeley Police Department are also welcome to come. Detroit is good for music and food and the police oversight. So that's all I have for the chair's report. If PRC officer's report.
Well, my approach can be with short announcements. You should care the NACO conference. Thank you very much. There have been no complaints filed since you last met. One of our cases was concluded via mediation. That is, mediation was conducted on a case and successfully concluded on April 30th. And now that case is closed, and under the regulations, PRC officer is required to come and report back to you that mediation occurred and the case is closed. And we have a board of inquiry hearing coming up on next Tuesday on May 14th. I believe Commissioners Ramsey, Calavita, and Allenby are on that board, so I just want to thank you in advance for your service on that upcoming board. And the actual PRC officer is out, and she'll be back in the office on Monday.
Anything on the Caloca hearing? I thought there was a Caloca hearing happening as well.
There is, that process is ongoing.
It's ongoing.
Yes, there's no date set yet for
So
that.
still on transcripts, still on
There are transcripts, we're auditing those transcripts, and there's a process, and then after that process has moved sufficiently forward, a hearing date will be set, and the PRC officer will represent the commission and the board's findings before an office of administrative judge. She will be there to defend the board's findings, and the officers will be there to defend their position as well, and then at some point, the judge will issue a decision, and we will inform you of that decision when that occurs.
Yes, the commissioners are not familiar with the colloquial hearing, that's what the process is like. Perhaps that's something that Ms. Lee can probably talk in the PRC officer's report a little bit more.
About the
As we
process?
get closer to
Okay.
that, so the commissioners can have a little bit more of a better understanding of what that looks like and what it is.
Chair?
Yes, of course.
I have a couple of
Please,
questions.
oh, please.
Are you saying that there's currently one of our decisions before the judge?
There's currently one of your decisions that is in the pipeline for an appeal.
I
It's
see.
not before the judge yet, because we have to take certain steps before that occurs.
I
We have
see.
to produce a transcript of the hearing, we have to audit that transcript. A hearing has to be set, and so on.
Okay.
But at some point, it's going to go before
Okay.
an administrative judge.
The second thing I had was, and I asked you about this at the conference, I think it would be useful for the commission to understand, we have these boards of inquiries, but we also have the mediations, one just concluded. I think it would be interesting or important for us to know the issues, that the topic of the complaint that was mediated, not just that there was one and it was concluded. Could we have short descriptions of these?
Possibly. I did raise
I
your
would-
concern with Catherine Lee, and we're looking at how we would
Right.
accomplish that for you.
So
Perhaps
looking for us to-
revising the case deadline report that she occasionally shares with you all, to include a column that says, what the allegations were,
Right,
or something like that.
right,
Yes,
okay.
so we're looking into it. Thank you for that
Thank
idea.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be specific on the nature of who was involved or who the person was
No,
involved.
just the topic.
I
because
think,
it's-
yeah, there was an allegation of improper arrest that went to mediation. Mediation was concluded effectively, and that's it.
Yeah, the initial idea is to show you the formal allegations,
Mhm,
formal final allegations,
Yeah.
to give you an idea of what
yeah.
we're looking at.
But not necessarily the filing itself, necessarily
Not
the
the
filing.
filing, it's just what the
That would be useful.
formal allegations are that we've sent over to the police department.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the acting PRC officer?
Or PRC light, as you called me earlier.
PRC officer light.
I like that one better.
PRC officer light. If there are no other questions, we can certainly move into subcommittee reports. Oh, no,
Actually,
sorry.
Chair, yeah.
Sorry, I have to jump to the chief from you. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna remind you that. people-
Yeah, I completely, I didn't see Chief Greenwood's smiley face, so I figured. How you doing, Lieutenant? And for the record, I forgot to say this, also present are Byron Norris, Commissioner Investigator, sitting for PRC Officer, I'm Kathy Lee, and I'm going to fumble here, because I'm past 55. I can see your Lieutenant Linda now, so you're here, and I always pronounce your name wrong.
No, you did
And-
it perfect.
Huh?
You did it just perfect.
I did it perfect time, and
Sergeant Molero.
Sergeant Molero, of course. So welcome as well. The floor is yours, sir.
The chief did ask me to relay a few messages on his behalf. So in regards to staffing, we're currently at 162 officers, and that counts the officers that are in field training right now and the officers that are currently in the academy. Later this month and into June, the marketing firm that was hired, Epic Recruiting, is supposed to start working towards creating a website for the recruiting and hiring process. Last week, the department presented a budget, talked about the budget with the city council, budget and finance committee. Apparently there's more meetings scheduled before their final decision May 28th. The last council meeting, April 30th, referred the update on various referrals and recommendation items to the Public Safety Committee, which will likely be discussed on the next meeting on June 3rd, but that will not delay the work that was described in the report. You guys already spoke about it, but the chief attended the NACOLE regional meeting last Friday, and you guys talked about it. He sat on the panel, discussed SB 1421 impacts, and I guess Q&A panel. The other thing that's going to probably affect us in the near future is due to ACSO closing the jail, Glendale Jail in Oakland. Our jail operations may get busier. Other agencies are speaking with us to see if they can get a contract with possibly booking their prisoners here. We already have other agencies now that do that, but more agencies are going to be looking to do that as opposed to transporting them to Santa Rita. So that's being looked into. The next Coffee with the Cop is May 23rd at the 4th Street Pete's between 4 and 6, and anyone's invited that might want to attend that. And lastly, anyone that wants to do a ride-along should get in touch with the chief so he can get in contact with Captain Reese and coordinate it through the appropriate watch commander. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Just in your conversation, I forgot our obligation here. Mr. Norris, is it possible to put on the radar of both the chief and the PRC officer that we will be requiring a budget presentation to the PRC, since it's now at the subcommittee, budget subcommittee level, not a full presentation to city council and city manager on approval of reductions of funds, that as part of our ordinance, we have jurisdiction to have input into the budget of the police department. So, I mean, now that process is starting with other meetings, that we will be looking forward to agendizing this before, at the chief's discretion, of course, and we can fit it in before it goes to a final discussion to the city manager with the final proposal, which will put us in line with our jurisdiction and obligation.
Yes.
I was just waiting for them to go to the first meeting of the budget, which is where you guys finally find out how much percentage has to be cut and stuff like that.
I have one thing to add.
Yeah,
to your report, which was the BPD had a booth at the book fair over the weekend, which was great to see, and I just
Sunday, right? Yeah.
stood around and eavesdropped on some of the conversations there. That was very nice.
Yeah, Mr. Officer Baron White was really good at posting them all over Twitter and Facebook, I should say. Any other questions for the department at this time? No questions, Mr. Roberts? You always have one or two up your sleeve. No?
I'm saving it for next week.
You're saving it for next week. Understood. This is a perfect opportunity to ask questions to the department, you know. Lieutenant Lindenau is a little more, it might not have all the information, but, you know, he's here. Okay, so I guess no other questions for the department. Let's move on to subcommittee reports. Lexipol Subcommittee met twice before this meeting. A lot of the items that were on the agenda that were referred from the commission back to the subcommittee have been cleared as it related to the shoulds and shalls. We are still skipping some items like 303, which is control devices and techniques, which I asked for that to be on hold until I can get a better understanding from the chief why that general order is in existence at this time. I need an explanation what the purpose behind it is. So I wait for Captain Roleri to be in attendance to that subcommittee so the conversation can actually be done in earnest. 307 vehicle pursuits was on hold because we're waiting for the final issuance of the general order on use of force. And we agreed on about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 other 9 general orders to include other 5 that were referred back. So I think we'll bring back to the commission next time, maybe 12 to 14 general orders for discussion and approval. Mr. Roberts? So we did not come to an understanding when our next meeting is. Hopefully, it's something that Ms. Lee can send out an email asking whether we can meet before our next PRC meeting. It seems to work best for us, right, within that revolving spectrum. And any questions about the Lexipol Subcommittee? But for the commissioners, the information you sent back, we have had that conversation, will be able to answer those questions for the next time.
Sorry, Chair, did you say you were looking at meeting next week, or
No, for the next PRC
for the
meeting.
next PRC meeting?
Yeah,
Okay.
it seems to work best for us because we're all committed already to being here. But we'll send the information to see whether everybody's available. MOU Compendium Subcommittee, we are still waiting on the answers from the chief to our questions. Once we get those answers from the chief, who hopefully they're forthcoming. So the chief, Lieutenant, the chief had recommendations for a subcommittee on the MOU Compendium that he was looking at. And we're just waiting for his answers so that we can bring, based on his answers, which is only 2 items that we had questions on, we can bring that to the full commission for a vote, for consideration of a vote. Yes, please.
Why don't we set a deadline of, putting this on our PRC agenda for the first meeting in June?
What was the timeline? I think the timeline was moved forward. Is a timeline for submission of the MOU Compendium, is that in September? Do you know, or is it August or September? I mean, so you're right, because this is so I mean, if we can, send to the chief that we're going to agendize this for final discussion and approval by the commission of the first meeting of the month of June. And that will give the chief a little bit more of a window and timeline for him to answer those 2 questions that we had.
Right. So the reason why we're trying to get the answers in advance is because that subcommittee meeting that forum is much more conducive to conversation than this one is. This one gets tricky because the formality of it is so stilted. So that's why we're trying to get some answers beforehand, and then when we bring it to all of you, we have a clear recommendation, and this hearing process should be smoother. So, and if he can't get that done, I guess it'd have to be the next 2 weeks if we're gonna have time to schedule our subcommittee meeting. Then he could at least let us know, rather than us, coming back to this meeting and.
But we have a timeline, so
Yeah.
there's a timeline for those who go to city council. If we don't have a response, unfortunately, we'll have it come in that those 2 general orders are not gonna be accepted by city council.
So you'd like
So-
a response by when, before?
But we have to have a discussion we have to have his answers before the June 1st meeting, so we can meet as a subcommittee, so we can see what his answers are, so we can have a formal conversation and vote. Because absent those recommendations, clarification on our very minor concerns, I mean, the possibility is that the commission might vote not to recommend us to particular MOUs to the city council, which is our responsibility is to make a recommendation to city council, not to the department. So we have to follow, we're trying to follow that track as much as we can.
So ideally,
Right.
you'd like it by the subcommittee meeting, once scheduled.
When scheduled
Okay.
and on or before the June 1st meeting. We'll discuss it one way or the other in June 1st meeting, because we have our own timeline to city council as well.
And he has these 2 questions already?
Yes, he does.
They're
Yeah, yeah.
simple.
Plus language, recommendations for him to review, yeah. It's not out of the blue kind of thing. So I think that's a plan. You okay with that? Okay. Standard approved subcommittee?
Yeah, so we created the committee on April 10th, myself, Commissioners Calavita and Mickelton. I think we created it because of sort of information we were getting at the time about the status of the meet and confer related to the standard of proof issue, so to clear convincing. I think at that meeting, we were under the impression that the meet and confer with respect to the commission's ability to change that rule on its own was not being pursued, but rather what was being pursued in the meet and confer was the ability to include that change in a charter amendment. So when we sort of, at that point, it seemed like our ability to change the rule as a commission, just by our own action, had sort of fallen through the cracks or dropped off. We then approved the creation of the commission. After the meeting, the city manager, who was here, came up to talk to me, and she indicated that this was still part of the meet and confer process. And so, as the meet and confer proceeds, that they are not only discussing the issue of changing it by charter amendment, but also discussing the issue of the commission itself changing its rules by commission thing. So I think that obviates the need to have the subcommittee, and we should wait for the meet and confer process to proceed. I know Commissioner Calvia has a little bit more information about the status and
Because I was at a meeting last week at Councilmember Harrison's office and spoke with somebody from the city manager's office. And they said that there is now a meet and confer meeting finally being held the end of May, which would restart the process. You know, because it died when the charter amendment didn't get on the ballot. So the end of May, they will have their first meet and confer process, and the preponderance of the evidence standard is part of those discussions because it's part of the charter amendment. And it seems like it would muddy the water to simultaneously push for a meet and confer on this individual item. So I think maybe we have to wait for this meet and confer process to evolve. And I didn't get the impression that there was any discussion of the commission by itself changing that standard, because were we to do that, it would still have to go through meet and confer.
The city manager, she said that proposal was also part of this meet and confer.
Okay, well, that's good.
And if that's the case, you know, my proposal would be one of two things: either to dissolve the committee or to keep the committee as constituted, and it can monitor what's going on with the meet and confer and consider any actions after that would be appropriate.
Go ahead, Mr. Roberts.
Did she give you any idea about time frame?
No, the only indication I have about time frame was from what I just heard from Commissioner Calvia. We got that information from the council members.
First meeting's gonna be
But she was very clear that this issue of the council itself changing the rules was part of the meeting confer.
Right.
And that is how it was laid out in the city attorney's memo, about certain issues that could be done with different levels of approval, being from the commission itself to the city council to the charter. So although it is a proposal potentially to be part of the charter amendment, I can see how it also could still be considered in that same process in terms of the commission itself changing. So I'm going on what she voiced. What she voiced, I trust is true. And if so, I would, I won't make a motion for it right now, but I think it would make sense to keep the subcommittee available, because there is going to be something to do when we get a response back from this meet and confer one way or another.
Just one bit of input. I mean, the meet and confer could go on for a long time, year plus. These things don't happen in a snappy way.
Well, it's been going on for
Depends on how many
more
items
than-
are on the list,
Yeah.
you know.
And I understand that, but the reality is, for us to make a change, as a commission itself, it has to go through the meet and confer process.
Yeah.
So, let's let that play out. My concern previously, when I put it on the agenda to create the subcommittee, was that this issue of changing the standard of proof through a commission vote had dropped off the meet and confer.
Oh.
And so, now that we know that it has not dropped off the meet and confer, our the urgency, the impetus for us to move forward, and as Commissioner Calvia said, starting to independently trying to move that issue forward, is now no longer, because it is part of the meet and confer. I do think that the subcommittee would have something to do, or will have something to do, the moment we get some response from the meet and confer. If it's at an impasse, there'll be something that we need to do. If it's not an impasse and it's agreed to, there'll be something we need to do. So that's why I say, I would say that we continue to keep the subcommittee, understanding that it really won't take any real action, any further action until it meets the process. Unless, unless someone thinks we should.
Well, let me give some background, because this is so murky right now, I just got the biggest headache of the world.
Sorry.
You were correct, you're correct. But there's so much murkiness here that it's incredible. I mean, the reason why the Police Review Commission did not act on having a vote on changing the standard of proof is because we've been asking from the city attorney forever to have an opinion on whether we could or could not. Only when the Police Review Commission created a subcommittee to create a change in the ordinance, whether it was charter amendment or an ordinance change, only then did the city attorney finally found the time to create the time to have an opinion for us as an answer to the question that was asked 4 years ago or 3 years ago by Commissioner and then Chair at the time, Alison Bernstein. Only then. That's the first confusion. Not an answer to the question, even predicated by letters by the Police Review Commission, even predicated by a vote, 2 votes as a matter of fact, predicated by analysis of Commissioner Alison Bernstein, that was the chair at the same time, sent to the city attorney, city manager, and city council. Only when the perspective or the possibility of an ordinance coming into place change or a charter amendment coming to change as a possible put in front of the voters, did the city attorney find the time to have an answer for us. That's one aspect.
What was her answer?
Their answer was that we had the purview to change it, but even if we change it, then it would become, they would still be able to be as purview of the meeting Confer. So that's one cloud here. Second cloud is, I was sitting at the city council when then council member Worthington, and I believe that Mr. Halpern was here as well, when the discussions were about the possible acceptance as an ordinance change or a charter amendment. Things were moving in a different perspective. And I remember a complete and straightforward directive to the city manager to continue to engage on 120 days as a way to evaluate the discipline, also on the standard of proof and other matters, for those to be engaged, for others to be engaged directly into the meet and confer with the Berkeley Police Association. That was a directive, irregardless of the decision to move forward or not on the compromise or final compromise between Commissioner Harrison and the mayor on a possible ordinance change. Sorry. That's the second cloud here. The third cloud here is, yes, this commission could vote at any time if it's a change on the way that they do the process to change the standard of proof. But out of the respect for the city attorney, out of the respect for the city manager, out of respect for the city council, and truly out of respect for the Berkeley Police Association, we never did it, because we knew that if we did, that would automatically trigger the meet and confer, because it's a change in the standard of which the police officers are getting judged on allegations of misconduct. So that really is a clear picture here of what this is. So now finally, after some pressure from some members of City Council, thank you, City Council Member Harrison, the city manager has come and said to you that they're finally having a conversation and re-energize their arguments or conversations about the possibility of change of standard of proof as one of the items in the meet and confer. Hallelujah, thank you so much. It only took 5 years. So that's where we are now. So I would agree that if there is a possibility of in good faith discussion that would either get a resolution of a yay or an nay, then the subcommittee should continue being in existence, because it doesn't hurt anyone to have discussions, to continue to have the process, to be vigilant, to see whether we need to jump in. And based on that decision, whether it is the Berkeley Association agrees or disagrees, then because they are in the meet and confer process, which already has been started, whatever lengthy time that might be, then the city, if that's what the city wants to do, or the Berkeley Police Commission, if it wants to push the issue with the city and the city council, can then ask for arbitration on that item. Absolutely. But it's going to take the political power and the city attorney to engage in arbitration on that particular item if they say no.
Well, it wasn't clear to me, because I asked the city manager about this, and I don't think she was totally clear. If there is an impasse, which is what you're talking about, an impasse in the meet and confer on something that the commission itself can change, what's then required to change it. It's not clear that the police department has veto power. just because you have a meet and confer in good faith and they don't agree to it, it's not clear to me that you can't legally change it in any event. You just have to go through the process. So,
Right.
so that's, that's what we'll find out. Is there different levels of change that if you come to impasse, there are different paths to proceed after the impasse.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that, that the police can just stonewall us and say no.
No.
So, right, so there may be plenty to do if they say no. It may be that we will have accomplished the required meet and confer and can
What I
change
hear.
or not change.
Right.
So the question then does non-action constitute that?
Right,
No.
well, at a certain point, has the meet and confer process run its course, and can you prove that someone's not acting in good faith if they just do nothing?
That's right. So if everybody acts in good faith and the process is taken further because it's being stonewalled or whatever it is, for whatever reason, so I would hope that Berkeley Association will not do that. That's to put that out there. But if there is no resolution to the meet and confer on whatever items there are, then there's a possibility of a second video of action which we'll have to take. But I would agree that if we are on the record saying that it is one of the items, I mean, we're not on the record, right? If it's one of the items on the record that it is part of the meet and confer, then that process should take place. I just wanted to give everybody a little bit, and Commissioner Matthews was here as well, and Roberts is here as well. We know what is, and Commissioner Matthews was chair of this commission when we had the second vote. So, this process has been, hopefully will realize itself, and at the same time we'll have 120 to a year for adjudication of complaints, and some things will start moving. So
I don't have any reason to believe that, there's not the meet and confer moving forward in good faith, but there could come a time where if there has been a meet and confer process going for 3 years and there's no resolution, that we then say, this is not moving forward in good faith just based on the amount of time. And we then say.
it's just a confer now.
And then figure out, then you figure out, what the commission wants to moving forward and changing its rules. I mean, if we changed our rules on its own, it would just trigger a lawsuit and then they would get it figured out.
True.
It's not, obviously I'm one of the lawyers up here, but lawsuits they resolve disputes. That's what judges are for. So if we have a dispute and we can't resolve it on our own, then that's the process. And to quote something that I heard in the NACOLE meeting, lawsuits are very good at times because they get a resolution to whatever the case might be. They're not good at times because it doesn't allow everybody to come to an understanding of what the best purpose is moving forward. If we have to force the Berkeley Police Department Association to be in adherence with the standard of proof that is followed by almost every single oversight board and police department, even by internal affairs in the Berkeley Police Department prospect, it would be sad indeed.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Chair,
So,
may I ask one clarifying question of Commissioner Hallelujah? You said that at the end of May, there will be a first meeting? Did I hear you correctly?
The idea is that it's being sort of restarted. They haven't had meetings, I don't know when the last meeting was, but I got the feeling that this is a new series that they're beginning.
A new series, because it was
A new
my
series.
understanding based on my very limited information sitting on the investigative side, that the meeting confer, it was ongoing. There may have been a break, but they have been meeting on those issues at this commission. They were reported to this commission, I thought.
well, if I can clarify, the last cloud was that some city council members were told by the city manager that they didn't have clarity enough on the directive by the city council on which items have to go into meet and confer.
Yeah.
And that the city manager's office was saying that because there was no clarity,
Yes, I think that's-
specificity in what to engage as a request, they might have not as forcefully as other items that there were on the BPOA, which was pay, benefits, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So that's the fourth cloud.
So this was not the city manager who introduced that, who said the third week in May, we have our first meeting scheduled.
On that topic. or just
On the charter amendment.
on various, okay, on the broader charter amendment, not just that topic, just
Yeah.
a number of issues, okay.
On the items from the charter amendment that specifically were directed by city council on a vote to be put as part of the meet and confer. I guess I needed clarity. I think city council members and the mayor have told them, maybe they read the agenda for that time on the vote, maybe they read the minutes, and the minutes said, oh yeah, they were directed to do this, so I think they're engaging again. That's what I think.
And for the record, I think that it's understood that these things cannot go on for years.
Mhm.
Like if it goes on for a certain number of months and nothing happens, it's an impasse.
Right.
So it's not gonna be 3 years, it's not gonna be 1 year. The lawyer who was there said typically it's 4 months. So we'll see.
Commissioner Mickenden?
I have a process question. So it's proceeding as an independent item and also as part of that larger proposal?
No, it's proceeding as part of the larger proposal. It's one of the items in the larger proposal, but not a separate track for it.
And the way the city attorney's memo on it is, and I could take it out of that previous packet, it separated different items according to sort of what level of approval they would require, whether a change to the city's charter amendment, whether approval by the city council, or things that the commission itself could do on its own.
So the elements of that proposal are being sorted into those categories?
Correct.
Okay.
And that, but they plan to meet and confer on all of those
They'll have to
issues
go through meet and confer, so it's.
in the same meet and confer. So
Okay.
presumably with respect to preponderance of evidence, you would, you'd have a meet and confer on it, and when it comes out the backside of that meet and confer, you could change it one of 3 ways. You could still change it with just our vote, with a council vote, or a charter amendment. And then there are other things that would come out the backside of it, it can only be changed through a charter amendment.
Okay, so the work continues. Thank you, Commissioner Ramsey.
So we will, like I said, we will keep the committee, but we won't be meeting until after we get response on the meeting confer.
Yeah, we'll keep it on the agenda just in case something changes, and then nothing to report or something to report will probably trigger that. Moving on to, so we're in all business now, right?
Yeah.
So 9A, consider revising the charge of the Lexipol Subcommittee. Just really quick background on this. On our examination of the Lexipol Policies and discussions with members of the full commission, we found ourselves having a lot of questions not to do with just the context of the general order. Our original directive was to look at new general orders as generated by Lexipol and the old general orders, and look for that the intent of the old general order was expressed in the new Lexipol formatting. And we were not looking as much into shoulds and shalls, or whether somehow, somewhere, so some other issues were present, and whether those issues were creating a difference in directive or scope of what the general order was before. So, but our scope was do a comparative, make sure that the formatting is not taken away completely from that. We're not in the process to do a revision of any general order contrary to popular belief. That was not the charge of the subcommittee. So this is on the agenda item now because we're still doing that comparative in terms of formatting and in terms of wording. But it seems that there's some instances in which, because of the Lexipol formatting and wording, some changes might be inadvertently happening. So the question to the commission is, does the commission feel that we can do the work within the scope that we have and bring them to the commission? Then we're looking at the shoulds and the shalls and having more questions, or whether the charge of the subcommittee should be expanded to a deeper review of the general order to see. And again, we do not want to make recommendations on a general order. For that, we have to create a subcommittee only on that general order. So there's 3 ways to do here. Keep the charge as it is, and just look at things that we were looking at them with a little deeper look. 2, If we find that there's a general order that requires a little more revision, motion to decide, bring it to the commission to a vote of the possible creation of a subcommittee to view that general order in particular, or to allow the subcommittee an expansion of its charge to look at the possibility of making recommendations for changes at the same time, noting that that would create a much different scope and work. And what we're trying to do is move to the Lexipol general orders in a manner which keeps the spirit of the original orders, but it also is, has a sense of diligence to the department and their implementation as they move forward. That's broadly is what we're looking at. Keep it the way it is. Add to the scope the possibility of recommending to the commission to create different subcommittees to look into different general orders that might need to be reviewed down the pipeline, or add more weight to that subcommittee, which is something that I don't think we want, in which we have to look deeper into general orders as we are looking at them, which will slow the process of Lexipol for the department, and it would be an insurmountable amount of work, to be honest. Yes, sir, please.
So, PRC Officer Lee pointed you all to the May 23rd, 2018 agenda item wherein that subcommittee was formed. I don't know if you all had a chance to look at the motion that created the Lexipol Subcommittee. And if not, I could read it. Well, thank you, Chair. So the motion was to create a subcommittee to review, evaluate, compare, and make recommendations for amendment, adoption, or rejection of all general orders that BPD is reviewing in light of Lexipol, and to include whether use of the Lexipol service by BPD is warranted.
Repeat it one more time.
To create a subcommittee to review, evaluate, compare, and make recommendations for amendment, adoption, or rejection of all general orders that BPD is reviewing in light of Lexipol. And there was a second part to that motion, to include whether use of the Lexipol service by BPD is warranted. I think that question was answered early on. But the main part of it was that first part.
So it sounds to me like your charge is broader than you thought.
Yes.
But I think it's fine, for the committee to simply tell us what you're doing, which right now is a strict and tight translation from one categorizing system to another. And I think that's fine. And your second one, which is if you found a general order that you thought warranted deeper conversation, then you form a separate subcommittee.
Refer it. So I guess we have the charge of today.
Sounds like it's pretty broad.
Yeah.
So so I guess, oops.
That covers it.
Easy, you did not read, you weren't here during that vote? I'm
That's
sorry.
why I didn't get on that committee.
You're probably the one who did the wording.
I didn't know, it was before my time, but I didn't
Oh.
want to join.
We'll use our discretion.
We'll use our discretion. So well, okay, clarification. You know, I wanna do due diligence, but at the same time, I understand that, you know, there's a process that needs to be expedited as much as we can. So we'll bypass that. I'm moving right along. Whole business B, Lexipol Policies for review and approval, have all commissioners had the opportunity, as per your April 24th packet on page 21, to read both R18, which is now Lexipol General Order 208, Departmental Forms, ooh, exciting, and Lexipol number 317, Public Alert. Very exciting as well. And does anybody have any questions, concerns, suggestions, or complaints on these two Lexipol General Orders?
We have 90 seconds to flip to the right.
Can I time you 90 seconds, or is that just a picture of 90 seconds?
It's a quiz.
Oh, great.
Did you read those out?
Well, you know, they didn't see that Lexipol, but you don't think they read that? Take it away. It's Departmental Forms 208 and 317. I don't have the packet with me because I reviewed them.
It was
April 24th.
Departmental forms is just every single form the police department uses to administer and fill stuff up.
Okay, and the
It's-
public alerts?
Public alerts is how do they disseminate public alerts, whether there is, the next still, information, whether it is, information on an earthquake, public safety, fires, all that stuff.
And you went through the wording of each one?
We did, those are two very automatic ones, that doesn't change anything in terms of the operations of the department. It literally was a translation between one to the other. Did you have questions, Ms. Commissioner Alby?
No, it's just that neither of us had the packet. I wasn't here on the 24th.
You must think of me.
You want that?
Just pass it to you.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's nicely labeled. These two, believe in labels. Teacher and consultant, labels everywhere.
Don't pull my label up.
okay. Great, okay. So you circled the shalls, I see. Somebody should say.
I went through that and circled things, but I'm fine with both of them.
Okay.
Because, we asked our questions and we got the answers and so forth, so I don't have any issues. That was my notes to flag when we talked to the department.
The department answered the questions. So we are recommending to the commission adoption of the general orders as they stand. This should be two easy ones.
Yes.
These are
Commissioner-
pretty straightforward.
Commissioner Ernest, does Commissioner Ernest have the, do we have the ability to give Commissioner Ernest maybe a little bit of a backlog on some of that stuff, so he has part of his information for the future?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll make sure you get,
So we don't.
Commissioner Ernest, these two are easy. The ones coming on the pipeline, you definitely need to see them because those ones will require much broader discussion.
Commissioner Allenby made a motion. I will
She did, but I
second.
didn't hear a second. I was hoping Commissioner Matthews would second.
What was the
So,
motion?
to accept the two general orders, Lexipol General Order number 208, Departmental Forms, Lexipol General Order 317, Public Alerts, and for submission back to the Berkeley Police Department. And to Sergeant Spielman, who would be happy to hear so. So there is a motion and a second. Allenby and Mикитен, is there any further discussion?
I just wanna make sure Commissioner Ernest had enough time.
So these are pretty forward, but for the next ones that will come into the pipeline for the next discussion, you should have a full copy of everything, because you might have some questions on them. Let's see that there's none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions, any nays? See, no, all straightforward ayes.
Yeah.
Did you abstain or voted on the aye, Mr. Ernest?
Excuse me?
We voted on the acceptance of those two general orders. You want to vote on the affirmative or do you want to abstain? Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, so 9C, whether to have a table of the Berkeley Juneteenth Festival on Sunday, June 16th. I know there were a couple of commissioners who said they would attend, right? They would make themselves available.
I think I did.
You did.
Commissioners Allenby and Mickelson.
I did, I said it's Father's Day, but I think, as long as it's early.
And
So-
per PRC officer lady, ideally, we should have, try to have 2 more people.
Yeah, two more
More
people.
altogether, so.
So this is where I think who are we missing? We're not missing anyone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're just missing one person who's not being appointed by City Council member Sophie Han. If you're listening, please appoint a member.
Is there any information about that?
No, it's always that's always an internal to the. I would love Mary Kay to be appointed, but Mary Kay, she's very busy. She's very busy.
So Chair, could we get either by consensus or a motion, just a confirmation or affirmation that you all want to do?
But so this is what I'm asking. Unless since we're all here, unless we have 2 more people that are willing to sit that day for at least 2 hours, right?
But don't do this. Because you're not gonna get 2 more people.
No, well, I'm just asking a question. No, I'm just, the light is very shiny on my face. I'm used to dark lights during night. Unless there's 4 commissioners who are willing to commit to participate on this time, we should not do it.
I met a couple of blocks from the park. I should be able to
You got
participate.
3?
So we have 3. So we have a 4th. Do I hear one?
PRC is not gonna be there?
It's anybody from the PRC office is gonna be there.
Good.
That could be the 4th person.
Not at this time. Just finish the process. Please.
So we have 3 members right
We have
now.
3, we need 1 more.
What hours are there? Yeah, it's more fun if it's 2 people sitting there. I mean,
The
I
hours
just,
are 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. chair, and also, we would be committing some funds to securing a slot at the event. I think it's $100.
So you say 2 hours, so 11 to 1.
We'll figure out the schedule with you all later once we have.
You want 4 people so there can be 2 shifts? That's 5
Basically,
hours, 6
yeah.
hours.
Let's see.
so 11 to 5, 6 hour, 3 hours each shift.
I think she was looking at, she said 1.5 to 2 hours for each person if we have 4. The way that she worked it out.
I think sitting in that place by yourself I did it one time under the sun and it
I
wasn't
don't think
fun.
I'd wanna do it.
I did. It was Commissioner Lippman and I. We're the only ones who present stuff. He did 3 hours. I did 3 hours, and
I'm sorry, Chair,
we
trying to
both
get
got a
forward.
10.
We're trying to get forward.
We both got a 10. I'm just saying.
I
So,
don't
I
know
mean-
what June 10th is, and I
Ju-
don't know what the purpose of our being there is, so that's
It's in your packet.
hesitant.
So
Oh, you don't have a packet. It's on the
Is it festival, and do people come up and ask us questions, or what?
We'll have, material on the table, and we can give it to them and tell them a little.
Well, the main reason is outreach. PRC commissioners used to engage in quite a bit of outreach in the community, let the community know what the PRC office is about. And this has been one of those regular, normal events that we normally participate in.
in addition to the Solano Street,
And it
Solano
is,
Street stroll.
it is, the Solano Street stroll, not as much, but this one is, purposeful, because it is attended by a large number of, communities that have more, than their fair share of contact with law enforcement.
And where is it held?
This one,
It's in Other Lane? Other Lane, yeah.
okay.
Ashby and Other Lane, right?
And
It's on the cusp of Other Lane and Ashby all the way to, I forgot the other street.
yeah, to,
People in Galveston, Texas.
that's when they are. Alcatraz.
It's between Axelrod and Ashby and Other
I
Lane.
don't have a calendar. Can I tentatively agree to do it, and then?
So I will tentatively try to do it as well, so we
Because
have 4 people. Well, I
June
mean,
16th, I have a
I'm
hard
just-
copy of the calendar, and it's not with me.
yeah, it's just the convention, the Democratic Party convention will finish on the 3rd, and I am on a flight to Hawaii after the convention. I do the vote on Sunday, Monday I'm off to Hawaii, so I need to figure out where I'm gonna be, but we could have, even if we have 3,
We have 3 firm and 2 tentatives, that's fine.
that's enough.
That should, yeah, thank you very much.
And with members of the PRC office there should be just plenty.
And, so
Oh, Ms.
we,
Lily was
just by
working.
consensus, we do want to do
Yeah.
this, okay?
So by consensus, we're moving forward with that.
All right.
Okay, let's move on to new business so we can roll along.
I should say that if my kid comes up with a really great Father's Day plan that conflicts with this, I'm gonna pull out, so maybe
I think we
don't
all
book it
will.
based on
But we're gonna give it our best shot, that's all we can do.
I'll have a conflict.
Okay.
The kid is gonna do something for Father's Day.
Well, during that time, yeah, just depends what's going on.
I mean, it's really the commission's call. If you all don't want to do this, you don't have to do this. We just wanna, we wanna get clarity before we issue a check and make arrangements.
I think we should do it.
I think it's important to go out and represent that portion of the population.
I think we should do it, even if we're not there for 6 hours, even if we're there only have no shifts to do 4 hours, it's important that we do it, so let's do
Yes.
it.
And I have done it in the past, I just wasn't sure I could make this date.
Right, so, yeah, we'll move on. We'll do it. Done. We'll figure it out, even if it's, even
Yeah.
if we have to drag some of y'all.
Yeah, okay.
We're gonna do it, right, Commissioner Ramsey?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. So number 10, new business. Consider recommending a policy. This is you, Commissioner Calvita. I'll give you the floor, please.
Yeah. So I don't know if you all had a chance to read my notes on this recommendation. I sent around some notes yesterday and.
And Commissioner Calvita, because I'm gonna give you the floor, I'm gonna give you the discretion to engage Mr. Elliott.
I
If you have any
appreciate
questions.
this opportunity. I just want to throw one more fact. We've done a lot of work again, the two agencies, plus the Peace and Justice Commission, on the chief's report from last council meeting that was delayed, and the whole process of the disparate number of stops of people of color since January 1st, 2015.
Quick question, do you mean stops or searches?
Stops. And I want to just throw out the analysis of the stops for 2018. There were more than 50% of people of color stopped, traffic stops of all kinds, in Berkeley than the Caucasian population. Now, people of color includes black and brown, and I believe Asian, but I'm not sure. Now, demographic-wise, the percentage of those three ethnicities, or whatever those terms, is about 18% all combined. So we know that many of those stops of black and brown ask that question of, are you on parole? So we suspect. So that's why it's important to take this item that step further. And unfortunately I have to leave, but I just wanted to throw that out.
Yes, when you said 50% more, you said 50% more, so, does that mean that 2/3, or what are the?
No, it was about, I had the.
It's
I
60/40?
do have the measure. It's about 60/40 or 55/45, but more than half, but just more than half.
So 60% of all vehicle stops were of people of color.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hopper.
Thank you.
So, yes, my notes start off with these similar statistics drawn from the Center for Policing Equity report of last year, where African-American motorists in Berkeley are 6.5 times more likely to be stopped than whites, based on the proportion in their population, and when they are stopped, they're 4 times more likely to be searched. So there's basically 2 components to my proposal here. One is the issue of asking a motorist who is being stopped, or a pedestrian, who's being stopped for a minor violation of some kind. It's easiest to think about a traffic stop. So asking a motorist who's stopped for not using his blinker, for example, asking them if they're on probation or parole. If they answer in the affirmative, and or the officer checks with the dispatcher and finds out in the affirmative, they are then allowed to search their vehicle completely, according to California law and the U.S. Supreme Court. So my concern is that these probation parole stops have a huge impact on this disparity. And I suspect, I don't know for sure because we don't have data on this, and for some reason none of the reports and recommendations suggest that we get data on this. We need data on who is asked that question, because I'm quite sure that it's racially disparate, and that it's based on this disparity that the searches are also disparate. Keep in mind that the motorist who is stopped and asked this question is being stopped for a minor traffic offense. There's absent any kind of suspicion of criminal activity, they're allowed to ask the motorist, are you on probation or parole? I suspect there's some racial profiling going on. We don't know that there is because we don't collect data on that, which we should do in the future. But some places, including Oakland, now, this past month, passed unanimously a proposal to change police policy so that absent a suspicion of criminal activity, a motorist or pedestrian is not immediately asked that question and subsequently searched. The police have a legal right to ask this question, but they don't ask it of everyone. And so it's a discretionary moment in which implicit bias can enter the picture. So I'm asking that we consider forming a subcommittee. I've done quite a bit of research on my own already, but I'd like to develop a subcommittee to consider what best practices are in this area, and with ultimately the possibility of proposing that this probation and parole inquiries and the related searches be revised as policy in the Berkeley Police Department. It's worth noting that our own Fairness and Impartiality report and recommendations from 1.5 years ago recommended that these policies be reviewed. That went down a black hole. We've seen nothing further of it. A Stanford study for OPD, the office, what does OPD stand for? Somebody help me. No. Oh, maybe it was the Oakland Police Department.
There was a Stanford study and there was an Oakland police study also,
Right.
by CPE, by
Right.
Center for Policing.
Right, except to my disappointment, neither the CPE did not recommend specifically to collect data on this issue, nor did they recommend to terminate that policy. Somehow, or to prohibit the asking of that question in subsequent searches. They asked that data be collected on what happens after a stop. But I think it's really important that data be collected on whether that question is asked and whether a fourth waiver, it's called a fourth waiver search, whether a fourth waiver search is done. Because I suspect that these fourth waiver searches are absolutely critical to understanding this disparate searching of vehicles. So I'd like to form a subcommittee.
A second.
Okay.
Oh, okay, so no, there's not, well, no, now that there is a motion on the floor to form a subcommittee, but, so, just to be, before we go into discussion, just to be clear, the motion on the floor is to create a subcommittee to examine whether to recommend revising policy on probation and parole searches of pedestrians and motorists. Is that the wording of the?
The proposal is at the end of this.
Okay, great. So, I mean, just for the record, can we just, can we read the possible, because that will,
Okay,
as we did for
so
the scope of our Lexipol, it would.
I move that we form a subcommittee to examine current best practices in the field with regard to probation and parole inquiries and related searches, in order that we may recommend possible changes to BPD procedures and urge the city manager to follow up on the city council's referral of 1 year ago. Because the city council referred it to the city manager 1 year ago. I'd like to light a fire under this.
So, is that clear enough?
It's right here.
Okay, so that's clear enough on the record.
Right.
So there's a second.
Was there a
So I
second?
had
Yeah, there
one-
was a second.
Yeah, I'd like to add one more thing. You know, a lot is made, and I'm not, a lot of is made of this concept of procedural justice now. We hear it everywhere. We heard it at the NACOLE conference. We heard it from the chief. We've heard it, I hear it in academia because it began as an academic concept. And procedural justice, the concept of procedural justice has 4 components. Probably the most central of those 4 is the concept, is respect. that law enforcement, the government, at large, needs to show respect to those it encounters in order to achieve trust and legitimacy from those communities. The asking of the parole and probation question immediately to a motorist who is stopped for not using his signal really rankles as disrespect. And, you know, if we're serious about this thing about procedural justice within the police department, this is absolutely critical, in my mind.
Got it. I mean, and we can, once, if the subcommittee is formed, that will be the basis of the conversation on that subcommittee and how it moves forward in terms of how you frame the discussion, the question of the process.
Okay.
Mr. Roberts.
Yeah, just a couple questions. On the referral you were talking about from the city manager, was that specific to this item?
Yes, it was.
It was?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
And
In response to the referral we gave to.
Yeah, because we sent in a long report about all this,
That's right.
so I think, you know, I think that was covered. But let me ask you this, on the stops.
that was 1 year ago. No, go ahead.
You know, the officers can check, I noticed, I'm reading from your report here, the drivers should establish driver's identity, inspect the license, registration, insurance status, do a DMV check on the registration, blah, blah, blah. Does any of that show, if you know, or maybe Lieutenant Linda now can tell us, would any of that show if they're on probation, if someone's on probation?
No,
If
not
they
the
do those
DMV
checks?
check.
You don't get that, you wouldn't get that?
If I did what kind of check?
A DMV check.
The basic records.
If you
check
do
on
any
every
of
call.
the license check or DMV check, yeah, registration, VIN number, any of
If I
that
just
stuff.
check in the vehicle and his driver's license, I wouldn't necessarily get anything like
You
that.
wouldn't
unless it's
get
connected-
anything on
Unless
that-
it's
on
connected
being
to a
on
warrant
parole.
or something like that.
Okay.
Sometimes warrants are connected to license plates and
Yeah.
things like that.
Okay, and, you know, I completely agree with the notion here, I mean, it's something that needs to be taken care of. But I have one other question for you, Lieutenant, and that is there some kind of training around this in the department on how you handle questioning, people if they're on parole or not?
I'm not aware of any policy.
There's no policy or no specific training?
No.
No, the only other policies that might be relevant to this would be G.O. traffic law enforcement,
That's right.
C10,
Yeah.
citation release, and A51, which is arrest and warrants and traffic offenses. A51 might be the one that be a little might be closer, but I read it and I didn't see
There's
anything.
nothing
on it.
in
There's
any-
nothing on it,
there's
that's
nothing
right.
in
There's no
any of the
policy, I
chapters.
did a search and I also
Yeah,
checked with,
so-
one of the,
Okay.
into cabinet.
The only three that would look like they might have something to do with it,
Yeah.
do not.
Nothing.
Okay, thank
There's
you.
nothing in the general orders at all.
So,
And-
thank
yeah.
yeah,
And when it says potentially urge the city manager to follow up on the city council's referral of 1 year ago, was that a standalone proposal regarding this Fourth Amendment issue?
What do you mean it's a standalone?
I mean, what referral was this? Was it a referral only?
Yes, the referral from a year ago, that was voted unanimously by the city council, referring to the city manager. This was on the action calendar of April 24th, 2018.
And it was just about this one issue?
It was about accepting and acknowledging the Berkeley Police Review Commission's report and recommendations to achieve fairness and impartiality.
There were
Part of that.
multiple issues.
Except, yeah,
but this was one of them.
but this was one of the issues that was within that report.
Yep. I think it makes perfect sense. The city manager has been notified in the general council that they would like for this to be reviewed. We're taking upon the review. When we do the review, if there's any questions, city manager ultimately, and city council ultimately are the two last powers in terms of if a general order is not instituted, it's not approved, it's not moved forward. So the city manager already has the bell, so to speak, in rank. So if we create a subcommittee and we figure out that it follows, whether within an existing general order or a new general order, right? Because you folks might find that you can put some of this process inside a current general order. You might find that, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think the discussion is to look into this so they can be reviewed, so either a recommendation for creation of a general order or a revision of one can be made so this particular recommendation can be taken into consideration and effect, right?
I'm gonna call the vote.
Yeah.
Byron, could you send around or include in the next packet the PRC report, the Chief Fairness and Equity and Policing? Did you, people, we don't have
I
it.
don't have it.
No, the folks that were not in the commission might not have it. Is that uploaded?
That's the one I was talking to you about today. I think everybody should get it. It's like a 25-page.
That should be uploaded to the PRC
from us to the
website.
council.
One of the websites?
Yeah, I think it should be uploaded to the
Isn't
website.
it in that giant orientation binder you gave us?
No, but it should be uploaded to the PRC website, so every single time we recommend something to city council, that should be uploaded on the PRC website for people to know what we work on.
Was that issue, for the chief, there's a response in this current agenda packet that you are gonna follow the chief on. He responded to various issues that you,
But it's not on the agenda.
it's on the agenda, but he's not here, and I think that was
Yeah.
your.
So that's what we're postponing that to the
Commissioner
chiefs
Rogers,
here.
but my question is, and I was just skimming through this report to see if that issue regarding this, asking people whether they're on probation or parole was addressed in this response to that report.
No.
It was
No,
not.
it was not.
No, none of the discussions that I had with the chief
None
about
of
his
them
report
was
to the
in it,
council
right.
included that conversation.
Yeah.
Some of it.
Basically, they took the report and referred it to the manager,
And that was it.
and that's the last we saw of it. That's
Yes,
why
we
this
worked on it.
other
I never
item
got
on
a copy
ten
of
C
it.
is really important, because that's the next step in the whole story, which really is moving it.
Okay,
at
so
a
let's,
snail's pace.
that's fine,
Okay,
so,
so are we gonna call it?
remember, if you wanna call the vote, you have to make a motion to call the vote, so I'd rather you don't call the vote, I'd rather we just do it, no further discussion, we'll vote. If you call the vote procedurally, you have to have a motion.
I'll withdraw.
No,
I mean,
no,
I
we-
don't want, one way or another, I want.
Yeah, we wanna get it done. I mean, so if there's no further discussion at this time, all in favor for the creator of the subcommittee to review, as stated by the motion, say aye.
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 Any nays, any abstentions? No abstentions, no nays, it's unanimous.
Can I have one last question?
The vote already happened,
Within an hour,
We already
on
had
the same subject?
We already had the vote.
what's the question, sir?
Pardon?
What's the question, sir?
My question is from Lieutenant Lindenau. So when they run a person's name, do they get a criminal record?
Can you do this afterwards, or?
This is something that we probably can, you know,
Oh, yeah, they can get the record if they search for it, absolutely.
They run the name.
yeah.
If they run the name by the dispatcher.
If there's a warrant under your name and they run your license, your driver's license, they'll know whether there's a warrant or not.
We're not talking about a
Well,
warrant.
if they're on probation or parole.
Yeah,
That's
all
what I'm
that.
trying to find out.
Was the probation, well,
That's
yeah,
what I was
probation
asking
and parole,
before,
yeah.
but he said no.
You asked
You were
for a
asking if-
DMV check, you asked.
Well,
for
and the
that.
name and the other things you had on your list.
Yeah, Mr. Matthews.
Are you appointing people to the subcommittee now?
So that would be my next step. So right now, we know, as a matter of fact, that Commissioner Calavita will be a part of that
You've done that more
subcommittee.
than once.
I understand, and it's because I'm past 50. So I know Commissioner Calavita is going to be a member of the subcommittee, right?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. So we have to have, at a minimum, 2 more members, no more than 3 more members on this committee
No
as an
more
addition.
than,
There are 8, so
no
there
more
are 8,
than
I would be
4
on
or
it.
8. You're
and no more than
right. I think
4.
you can do
I think 4.
Yeah, one.
I'll-
Remember writing the regulation. So we have Commissioner Calavita. Who else wants to be a
I'll
member?
be on it.
I would be on it.
Roberts
That you, Raleigh, Roberts, and Matthews. We're done.
and Matthews are 4.
Right.
Okay, we got that 4.
Did you have interest in? No, you're busy. So as it stands is Calavita, Matthews, Allenby, and Roberts, and that
And we will assist you in setting up your first meeting.
And Commissioner Ernest, because I know that you might want to participate on the subcommittees, and I don't know if your interest is to jump in right now, right off the bat. I would say if you have time to when the meetings happen, to participate. You cannot vote, you can be as a member of the public only, but you can familiarize yourself with how this subcommittees are working like we did today. And then you can figure out, yeah, I want to participate in one of them. And if by any chance we need an alternate for any subcommittee, we'll be more than happy to jump you there so you can participate at the product level. Okay. Yes, sir. Okay, communications are attached. Everybody knows communications are there. Let's jump to public comment. Is there any public comment at this time?
Oh, we're already there? Wow.
Yes, because we're postponing B and C because
Yes, I heard.
unfortunately, C, the chief is not here in B because Commissioner Ramsey needs more information from Senator Weiner.
Okay, great. I did want to just clarify which pages that chief's report was on, but I'm sure I can find it if it's in this packet.
The answer to the referral to council.
Yeah.
It's on page 30.
On page 39?
Okay.
Yeah,
Is
page
it 39?
Okay, great. And then, yeah, just going related to the staff data, which I guess will be discussed later, and we were just not representing any organization right now or anything, but I too have been really curious to know of the stops population, if they could, as I understand it right now, we don't know how much is duplicated, because one person could be represented many times. So it would be nice to know, it would be nice if they could kind of deduplicate it and just give us a population for one person as one stop, or how many people are representing multiple stops, how many people are on probation and parole, because I have tried to get that in the past, and some people think that population is large enough that it would skew the data, other people think it's small enough and it wouldn't affect it, but without knowing, there's no way to know what the effect is, so I do look forward.
So the answer, I think some of the answer is there, and with the REPA changes to which are coming in the pipeline, which are as broad as perceived gender or perceived sexual orientation, is that broad. I mean, I think I think the chief now is creating a task force to see how other jurisdictions are allocating that data, how they're cataloging it to be able to make it more public. Part of that conversation with him will be then what are we looking at accessibility and dissemination of that information on a quarterly basis. So I think that's in this conversation, but I think he has a plan on his page on how he's going to put that forward.
That's great, because I do think that there are definite challenges getting accurate data, getting complete data on just many aspects of operations, and a lot of that is a resource issue and just capacity issue, which we all struggle with. But I look forward to learning more, and then also, maybe I didn't follow the question, but I did think that among the chief's kind of responses to all the referrals, I did think the fair and impartial report and data that you guys, I thought that was on the list to be discussed at a certain point, but I don't know, I haven't read his response here, but I don't think it fell into a void. It was my understanding they keep saying we will get to it, but there's been a lot of other more pressing things, and I certainly look forward to that whole discussion. Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment?
Chair, I can just make a quick announcement. I forgot to mention earlier that there's a bill making its way to the California Assembly that would authorize every county in the state to establish a sheriff oversight board and an office of the Inspector General to complement that board.
AB 392.
It's 1185.
Oh, 11.
And that
That's right.
That may be something in the future the commission may want to ask council to endorse as well. Okay.
Yeah. We're in public comment, so we can close it. That's on the. We have to look back. It's public comment.
Yes. So picking up on the immediate discussion you've got here, the RIPA, Racial and Identity Profiling Act requirements that the state has passed, which BPD is in the process of complying with in advance of the 2022 effectiveness date. You'll notice on page 53 of your packet that the place for this sort of information is in item 10 in the very long list of data elements that each officer will be capturing pursuant to, among other things, traffic stops. So the subcommittee should consider a recommendation to get the required data for this item into that process.
That's right.
As I understand it, this list is not hard-coded, it's simply a template that accompanied the assembly bill.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is a special concern, then I would argue that it ought to be inserted as early in the process as possible. This is actually a useful thing to capture because I think, as the previous speaker said, there's not a lot of data and it's hard to capture and it's hard to organize in a way that lends itself to statistical analysis. I think when you start investigating this more closely, the statistics are remarkably difficult to keep straight. It's hard to keep a sample, the sample space of outcomes is very unmanageable. But as far as this commission goes, I'll go back to that watch BPD mantra. I very much am glad that you're going to have a presence at Juneteenth. I think that's a hugely important thing for this body to represent at. Partly because, as you say, certain communities are going to be represented there who have interactions with the police, but also it's part of your mission to actually be a point of contact of the public to the police. You are a go-between, okay? You're not the police, you're an oversight or monitoring body. And so to that extent, I think it's a good thing. And by that same token, I strongly urge you to go on ride-alongs so that you understand from the police perspective what it is like to be out there. I think that's a very valuable thing, and it might inform you about what goes on. Now I have to say, I'll come clean, I have not myself gone on one, but I know people who have, and they find it enlightening to know what a police shift really involves. Meeting the public is good. It might actually help. You heard reference to the budget presentation the police chief made last Friday. May be hard to see, but this red line here is the 181 officers BPD is authorized to have.
1 minute.
The last 2 years, we've seen this downtrend, and you'll remember in the middle of 2018, there was a trough at 153 officers. We're now up to about 162, if I heard properly. Many things have gone by the wayside because the chief has viewed addressing the staffing challenge as the #1 priority. He has not told me that. I've just simply observed that as a person watching last August 5th, the BPD defusing a potential riot situation. I think that the more you watch BPD and understand the constraints within which it operates and the population that it is trying to serve, the better that you will do your jobs. And I thank you for doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Public comment?
Go back here because I can
3 minutes.
Thank you. Christine Schwartz here. I actually second what our community member here has stated about going on police ride-alongs. They're very educational. I've been on quite a few in different cities. And you get a better understanding of what the police do on a daily basis. I also wanted to interject, when you mentioned about budget recommendations, are you including input from the police? I would think that that's actually a very important thing. And your clout for your commission for council is actually going to be, pretty weighty. So, for me, at the budget council meeting last night, I recommended, training. Remember, we no longer have Urban Shield, and fire, EMS, police, Berkeley CERT, a lot of groups are affected by this, and I would think we need to do something now to fill that gap. I don't know what, but pay for them to go to a place that has that training. I thought it was very useful, and I know a large number in our community agrees, and I believe the police too, and not only for the SRT team, but for other police officers as well. As you're aware, there are devastating acts in multiple cities, with bombings, with shootings, etc. I think Berkeley is no way in a position that won't be affected by these things, and it only behooves everybody to be prepared. So I don't have all of the answers, but I'm hoping that you will consider this. Thank you.
Thank you. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Second, made by Commissioner Pinkerton and seconded by Commissioner Calavita. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. We're adjourned.